What if the life you've been praying for is already waiting on your order? Every thought you think, every feeling you feel, every word you speak places a command. The question is, what have you been ordering? Welcome to the Order It podcast, where we wake up, wise up, and step into the life we were always meant to live. I'm your host, Dr. Palmonia Gordon, Dr. Pal, author, speaker, transformation coach, and the Words Matter architect. Whether you're a woman navigating midlife, an entrepreneur or executive reaching for your next level, or someone simply stuck and wondering if there's more to life, you are at the right place at the right time. It's time to order it. So let's begin.
Imagine you're sitting in this metal tube, right? Hurtling through the stratosphere at like 40,000 feet above the air.
Oh yeah, totally normal Tuesday afternoon.
Right, just a casual commute. But outside, the temperature is minus 60 degrees. And the air is so thin that it's just fundamentally hostile to human life.
Right. It's an environment where you literally shouldn't exist.
Exactly. And inside the cockpit, a pilot is sitting there monitoring, hundreds of variables simultaneously. If that pilot hesitates for one single second, the trajectory of the aircraft shifts by hundreds of feet.
The margin for error just completely evaporates.
It's gone. Total uncompromising urgency.
Error.
Now, the question we're posing for you today is, what if you treated your Tuesday afternoon with that exact same level of split-second precision? Would you thrive, or would you just, completely crack under the pressure?
Honestly, it is a terrifying proposition for most people because we are so accustomed to treating time like this, like a slow-moving river,
Yeah, just floating along.
Exactly. We think we can just casually float, maybe bump into the banks, maybe paddle a little bit when we feel inspired. The idea of living with the hypervigilance of an aviation environment, it seems like a fast track to a nervous breakdown.
Sounds exhausting, honestly.
Right. But what we're looking at today in this deep dive fundamentally rewrites that entire assumption.
Yeah, because we are diving into a highly specific blueprint for personal transformation. And the reason I wanted to explore this material for you listening is that it doesn't rely on those abstract, feel-good manifestation tropes.
Well, thank goodness.
Right. Like, we're decoding the teachings, the deeply personal anecdotes, and really the whole psychological architecture developed by Dr. Palmonia Gordon. And she brings this perspective that is forged in the absolute extreme environments of high-stakes aviation.
Which is such a unique lens.
It really is.
Yeah.
But then she combines that with the grounded reality of being a published author, a business owner, and get this, a mother of 5.
A mother of 5. Her background creates this completely fascinating crucible. Because when you combine the rigid life or death protocols of aviation with the sheer chaotic unpredictability of raising 5 children and running a business, you don't have the luxury of entertaining vague philosophies.
No, not at all.
You need mechanics that actually work under immense pressure. Her philosophy is essentially an operating system for reality.
Yeah. And just to set the stage for the kind of energy she brings to this operating system, I have to introduce her name exactly the way she presents it in the source material.
Oh, I love this part.
It's so good. She tells her audience to think of it as pal like friend and pneumonia like pneumonia, but nicer.
That introduction alone is this micro demonstration of the deep psychological rewiring we're going to explore today.
How so?
Well, think about it. She takes a word with a heavy, clinical, deeply negative connotation, pneumonia, and she instantly neutralizes its power using humor and warmth. It disarms you completely.
Oh, wow. I didn't even think about it like that.
Yeah, and it signals this total mastery over association, right? Like, she flat out refuses to let a negative sound dictate her identity.
That's incredibly powerful. So our mission for you listening today is to really walk through this exact blueprint. We're going to look at 3 foundational pillars that she argues they're just non-negotiable if you want to actually step into greatness rather than just, dreaming about it on your couch.
Right.
We're looking at, first, the absolute urgency of time as a catalyst. Second, the unyielding no exit doors mindset for manifesting those dreams. And third, the literal energetic power of the specific words you speak every single day.
And really, the overarching theme here is that you are actively and continuously constructing your reality. The universe isn't just like happening to you. It's responding to the subconscious orders you're placing.
You're putting in the order.
Exactly. The issue is that most of us are blindly handing over blueprints that were drafted by our deepest fears and our laziest habits.
Man, that's heavy. Handing over faulty blueprints. So to stop doing that, you first have to recognize that the construction site is on a timer, right? The cement is actively drying. Dr. Gordon had this really profound realization about this.
Yeah, she did.
She describes waking up one morning and her entire consciousness, like every message she received, every memory flooding her brain, was singularly focused on time and urgency. It was this commanding theme that really forced her to look at her life through the lens of her aviation background.
So let's break down the physics and the psychology of that 40,000-foot environment because it is so critical to understanding her framework. Commercial aircraft travel at roughly 600 miles per hour.
Which is mind-boggling.
Right. And that means in one single second, the plane moves nearly 900 feet. So if a pilot is delayed by just a minute in executing a maneuver or communication...
Ticking your phone for 60 seconds.
Exactly. The aircraft has traveled over 10 miles in that minute. A minute's delay isn't just a tick on a clock up there. It is a massive geographical displacement.
Wow. 10 miles.
Yeah. It causes missed connections, it alters the trajectories of hundreds of people's days, and in an emergency, it is literally the difference between life and death.
And she uses the example of a sick passenger, which I found so gripping. If someone falls ill at that altitude, the crew, they can't convene a committee to discuss their feelings about the situation.
Let's put a pin in this and circle back on Tuesday. No.
Right. They can't procrastinate. They have to act with split-second precision, relying on deeply ingrained training to ensure safety. There's an absolute removal of hesitation.
And she takes that visceral, high-altitude reality and she applies it directly to the human experience on the ground. She presents this staggering reframe of how we view the clock. Her quote in the material is, "Time is a tangible instrument to measure your expectation."
Time is a tangible instrument to measure your expectation. That concept completely stops you in your tracks. Because we normally think of time as a passive vessel. It's just, the container that our life happens inside.
It just passes.
Yeah. But calling it a tangible instrument changes the entire relationship.
Well, think about the instruments in a cockpit. An altimeter doesn't just passively exist, right?
Yeah.
It actively measures your exact distance from the ground. A speedometer actively measures your thrust.
Okay, I'm with you.
Dr. Gordon is arguing that time itself is a gauge. So the time you spend waiting for a goal to manifest isn't this empty, wasted space. It is an active thermometer. It's taking the temperature of your readiness, your preparation, and your actual expectation that the goal will arrive.
Okay, but, and I want to push back on this a bit, because translating the cockpit to the kitchen table is intense. If I am treating my mundane tasks, my emails, my commute, making lunch, with the split-second urgency of a pilot at 40,000 feet, I am going to burn out my adrenal glands by Thursday.
Oh, absolutely. You'd be exhausted.
The human body just is not designed to sustain a constant fight-or-flight panic response.
Yeah.
So how is this hyperurgency different from just rushing blindly through life in a state of chronic anxiety?
And that distinction right there is the linchpin of her entire philosophy. Because rushing and urgency are fundamentally different neurological states.
Really? How so?
Yeah. Rushing is born from fear. When you are rushing, your sympathetic nervous system is just flooded with cortisol. Your prefrontal cortex, which is the logical planning part of your brain, essentially shuts down, and you operate on sheer panic. Rushing is reactive and chaotic.
Okay, that sounds like my typical Monday morning.
Right. But urgency, in the way Dr. Gordon defines it, is rooted in deliberate, hyper-focused alignment.
It sounds like the difference between a panicked commuter who woke up late, swerving aggressively through morning traffic, white-knuckling the steering wheel, and a Formula One driver.
Yes, that is the perfect analogy.
Like, the commuter is experiencing massive distress. The F1 driver is moving at 200 miles an hour, which is a speed that would paralyze a normal person with fear. But inside the hammock of that F1 driver, their heart rate is incredibly steady, their breathing is controlled, and their movements are minimal and precise.
They're in the zone.
Exactly. They're operating with absolute urgency, but zero panic. They're in a state of flow, not flight.
The commuter is a victim of time. The F1 driver is the master of the instrument. To achieve that state of calm urgency, you really have to embrace a paradox that Dr. Gordon outlines. She demands this split-second readiness, but simultaneously, she delivers a direct message to the person who has been waiting relentlessly for their breakthrough.
The person who is on the verge of giving up.
Right, they are exhausted, and her message to them is, God says don't give up. It is time to trust the process.
Oh man, the psychological relief in that statement is immense.
Yeah.
Anyone who has chased a massive dream knows the crushing weight of the waiting period. You put in the work, you visualize, you execute, and the results are just invisible. You look at the clock and think, I am wasting my life.
We've all been there.
But she is asserting that the waiting period was the preparation. The time that passed was the instrument calibrating your expectation.
The psychology of patience is often completely misunderstood as passive waiting, like you're just sitting at a bus stop waiting for the bus to arrive.
Well-
But active patience is a crucible. The delay isn't a denial, it's a structural requirement. She notes that the thing you are waiting for is going to come to you in a way you had never imagined possible. But the absolute prerequisite for that arrival is that your internal instrument must be properly calibrated.
You have to be ready.
You must keep hope alive and make the definitive commitment that you are fully ready for the exact split second it arrives.
So if time is this critical, and if every second is actively measuring our readiness, then the absolute worst thing we can do is dilute our focus. Like if you are that F1 driver locked into a hairpin turn, you cannot be glancing over your shoulder looking for the exit ramps.
No, you'd crash immediately.
You have to be totally committed to the track. And that concept forces us directly into Dr. Gordon's core philosophy, which is actually the title of her book, Order It.
Order It. It's such a brilliant piece of psychological architecture because it operates on two distinct levels. The first level is the one we're mostly familiar with in modern manifestation culture, which is the command.
Like ordering at a restaurant.
Exactly. You walk into a restaurant, you look at the menu, and you tell the waiter exactly what you want. You don't say, I'll take whatever you think I deserve. You place a precise order.
But the second layer is where the actual transformation occurs, right? Because she explains that to order something also means to put it into a state of alignment. You have to organize your environment.
Yes.
Like you cannot screen commands at the universe while your daily habits, your finances, and your mental state are in total chaos. The external request requires an internal organization.
And to force that internal organization, she utilizes a specific physical trigger. She introduces this interactive exercise where you must pause, physically point at your environment, and declare out loud, no exit doors.
Okay, think about the physical mechanics of that for a second. For you listening right now, imagine stopping what you are doing, pointing squarely at your biggest obstacle or your most intimidating goal, and declaring verbally, no exit doors. Your spine straightens. Your breathing shifts. It creates an immediate boundary in reality.
It fundamentally alters your neurochemistry. I mean, the human brain is evolutionarily wired to conserve energy and avoid pain.
Right. It's lazy by design.
Exactly. When the brain knows there is a backup plan, an exit door, it rests in a state of passive hope. It allows the basal ganglia to run on autopilot because it knows, subconsciously, that if the situation gets too uncomfortable, it can simply pull the ripcord and escape.
Just quit and go back to my old job.
Exactly. But when you definitively lock the doors, you induce a state of cognitive dissonance that the brain is forced to resolve.
Because by removing the escape route, you force the brain out of rest and digest and push it into a state of necessity-driven innovation.
Precisely. Without an exit door, the brain realizes that survival and success are now identical. It begins to optimize new strategies. It taps into dormant reserves of bravado, imagination, and intuition. You are forced to take risks in unusual situations because the familiar, comfortable path out of the room just no longer exists.
But she doesn't just hand you this concept and wish you luck. Like, she establishes rigorous, almost brutal requirements for surviving inside a no-exit doors reality. The first requirement is total, unmitigated responsibility.
Yeah.
She says you have to be able to stand in that locked room and say it was me.
And that level of ownership is terrifying for most people because we are so conditioned to outsource our failures. We blame the economy, our upbringing, our boss, the algorithm.
The algorithm changed, that's why my business failed.
Right. But the psychological trap of outsourcing failure is that you simultaneously outsource your power. If you cannot look at a collapsed project and say, it was me, then you also cannot look at a massive triumph and claim it. You reduce yourself to a passive observer of your own life.
And what fascinates me is the next requirement she pairs with that extreme ownership. Because if you lock yourself in a room and take the blame for every failure, that room will very quickly become an incredibly toxic place to live.
Very dark, very quickly.
So she introduces the mechanism of self-forgiveness. She emphasizes that in this locked room, you must find the opportunity to reset your goals and release negative emotions. You have to be able to say, I'm sorry to yourself.
The mechanics of self-forgiveness are so critical here. It's not about letting yourself off the hook. It's about clearing cognitive load. Unforgiven guilt acts like a heavy background application, draining your brain's processing power.
Like having 50 tabs open on your browser.
Exactly. When you genuinely forgive yourself for past mistakes or wasted time, you clear the cache. You ignite new visions because you are no longer using all your energetic resources to punish yourself.
This directly challenges our entire cultural obsession with the overnight sensation. We love the aesthetic of the sudden explosive success, but Dr. Gordon dismantles that illusion by introducing the concept of growing roots.
She asks a deeply profound question. Can anyone see time? When you plant a seed, all the initial growth happens downward in the absolute dark. The roots are pushing through dense soil, navigating rocks, establishing a foundation. To the outside observer, nothing is happening. It just looks like dead dirt.
But that invisible groundwork is the only thing that sustains the visible success. If you somehow forced the shoot to burst through the soil without those deep roots, the roots you only develop when there were no exit doors to escape the hard work, that overnight sensation would be ripped out of the ground by the first strong wind.
Absolutely.
True stability requires walking through the fire, not just finding a clever side door to bypass it.
This brings us to a highly nuanced, slightly fragmented anecdote she shares about her father, which perfectly illustrates the tension between accepting support and maintaining the ultimate authority over your own order.
Yeah, let's build out the scene she describes. She was already a mother of 3 children, managing a chaotic household. And whenever her dad would visit, he would bring 4 bags of cheese strips.
Which is very specific.
Very specific. She describes him as a great man, a caretaker who loved and provided for everyone around him. Those cheese strips represent the mundane, daily sustenance and love that our support systems provide. But then she drops this incredibly complex boundary regarding her relationship with him. She says, "But you still don't give my eulogy."
You still don't give my eulogy. To truly grasp the weight of that statement, we have to examine the psychology of a eulogy. A eulogy is the definitive summary of a human life. It is the final narrative arc. And crucially, it is almost always written and delivered by someone else.
Right.
In sociology, there is a concept called the looking glass self, which suggests we build our identity based on how we believe others perceive us. By stating, "You still don't give my eulogy," Dr. Gordon is violently rejecting that concept.
She is drawing an impenetrable line in the sand. She is basically saying, I deeply love you. I am profoundly grateful for the comfort, the care, and the 4 bags of cheese strips you brought into my life, but I absolutely refuse to surrender the authorship of my existence.
It is so common, especially during periods of deep struggle or financial instability, to allow our caretakers, our parents, our spouses, our mentors to start writing our script. Because they provide the safety net, we subconsciously feel obligated to adopt their vision for our lives.
We let them draft the blueprint because we're just grateful for the safety.
Exactly. Dr. Gordon is warning us that maintaining a no-exit doors mindset means you cannot hand over the pen no matter how much you love the person holding the safety net. You must define your own triumph.
Think about how radically this challenges the modern entrepreneurial advice to constantly pivot. We are bombarded with the idea that if a path is difficult, or if you encounter resistance, you should immediately pivot to find the path of least resistance. You find a side door.
The pivot culture often masks a profound lack of commitment. It treats every obstacle as a sign that you are in the wrong room. Dr. Gordon's architecture suggests that the obstacle is exactly why you need to lock the door and stay in the room. You don't pivot away from the fire, you forge the tool you need inside of it.
But there is a massive, fatal flaw lurking in this entire strategy. Like, you can burn the ships. You can stand in the middle of your locked room taking total responsibility, fully committed to growing deep roots. But if the tools you use to build your new reality are fundamentally corrupted, the house will still collapse.
You're building with rotten wood.
Exactly. You cannot declare no exit doors if your daily casual vocabulary is subconsciously carving escape hatches into the drywall.
Which transitions us seamlessly into the third pillar of her blueprint. And arguably, this is the most technically precise aspect of her teachings, the energetic architecture of words.
This is where the material shifts from psychological framing to almost literal physics. Dr. Gordon's thesis is that words are not merely passive sounds vibrating in the air to convey information. She categorizes words as energetic beings.
Energetic beings.
Yeah. When you speak a word, it does not just die in the air. It goes out ahead of you like a scout, and it actively hunts for circumstances in the physical world that match its exact picture.
To really understand the mechanics of this, we need to look at how the subconscious brain processes language. The subconscious mind does not process abstract logic. It is a literal image-matching machine.
Okay, tell me more about that.
So in neuroscience, there is a network in the brain called the Reticular Activating System, or RAS. Its primary function is to filter the billions of bits of sensory data you encounter every day and only show you what it believes is important based on what you focus on.
Oh, is this like the Bader-Meinhof phenomenon?
Yeah.
Like when you buy a yellow car and suddenly you see yellow cars everywhere. The cars were always there, but your RAS is now actively highlighting them because you gave it a target.
Exactly. That's the perfect example.
Yeah.
When you speak a word, you are programming the RAS. If you say the word red, your mind instantly visualizes red. The subconscious takes that image and begins scanning the environment to find or create circumstances that match it. The words you speak are quite literally the algorithmic code that dictates what your brain allows you to perceive as reality.
And because this algorithmic code is so ruthless and exact, Dr. Gordon identifies 4 specific phrases that are acting as malware in our brains. These are phrases we use so casually, yet they are structurally devastating to our blueprints.
So we say them all the time.
All the time. If you want to transform your life, she insists you must eradicate these 4 phrases. I'm broke, I'm tired, I'm sick, and poor me.
She diagnoses the root cause of this malware as lazy speaking. We use negative shorthand because it's culturally acceptable and requires less cognitive effort. We often try to soften the negative state by adding a negation. We say, I am not sick. But the subconscious mind is notoriously terrible at processing negatives.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it strips away the word not and latches fiercely onto the root command, sick. The picture painted in the mind is still an image of illness.
Hold on, let me stop you there. We need to test the structural integrity of this idea because this is where a lot of manifestation theory falls apart for the average person.
Fair enough. Let's hear it.
If I pull out my phone right now, open my banking app, and see that my account balance is exactly $0.00, standing in my kitchen and declaring I'm not broke feels like clinical delusion. It feels like toxic positivity. Isn't that just lying to myself about a mathematical reality?
It's a vital pushback, but it misinterprets her instruction. Dr. Gordon is absolutely not advocating for delusion. Toxic positivity is the denial of reality. What she is proposing is a structural reframing of the truth. You must separate the factual circumstance from your core identity.
Okay, let's run the first phrase through that framework. I'm broke. How do we strip the identity away from the math?
Well, when you declare I am broke, you are using the verb to be. You are equating your entire existence and identity with a state of having nothing. The energy you are sending out ahead of you is lack, and your reticular activating system will go out and find evidence to confirm that you are indeed fundamentally lacking.
Wow.
Instead, she suggests stating the exact same mathematical truth without the identity attached. You say, I am not in the financial position right now to acquire this. Or, borrowing a phrase from a friend of hers, it's not in the budget.
It's not in the budget. The psychological distance created by that is incredible. Because I'm broke implies that power has been entirely stripped from you. You are a victim of circumstance. Things are falling apart. But a budget is a tool of management.
Precisely. To have a budget implies that you have a system. It creates what she calls a consciousness of your finances. You are acknowledging that you do possess resources, but you are exercising the authority to allocate them elsewhere. You remain the CEO of your reality. You are making a conscious decision, which means you retain your power. You have not surrendered your identity to the zero in the bank account.
It's the difference between being a victim of the math and being the accountant.
Exactly.
Okay, let's look at the second phrase, which is honestly a global epidemic. I hear it 50 times a day, and I probably say it 10 times myself. I'm tired.
Again, the mechanism is the exact same. When you continuously announce, I'm tired, that energetic word goes out ahead of you and commands your neurobiology to match the picture. Your brain signals your body to decrease energy output, increase lethargy, and fulfill the order you just placed. She shares a brilliant anecdote about how deeply this programming can be understood even by a child.
Oh, her youngest son, JC. I found this story so illuminating regarding how we implicitly teach neurolinguistic programming to children. She describes being at events, and an adult would casually sigh and say, oh, I'm so tired. And little JC would actively interrupt the adult and ask, Mom, can you tell her what she's saying?
He possessed a clarity that adults lose through cultural conditioning. He understood the absolute rule of this architecture. What you say, you get more of. He recognized that the adult was looking at a faulty blueprint and actively ordering more fatigue.
The technical correction here requires identifying the end goal rather than fixating on the current obstacle. Unless your actual desired outcome in life is to be exhausted, why are you painting that picture for your subconscious?
You have to command the destination, not the delay. Instead of identifying with the fatigue by saying, I'm tired, you articulate the requirement. I would like some sleep. Or, my body requires some rest.
Or you pivot the energy entirely toward vitality. You declare, I want to feel amazing. I want to feel filled with energy. I want to feel alive. You give your subconscious a target of vitality to hunt for, rather than a target of exhaustion to succumb to.
Which naturally escalates into the third forbidden phrase, which deals directly with their physical biology. I'm sick. She points out the absurdity of how we complain. People will literally walk around muttering, oh my God, I'm getting sick, I'm sick, I'm sick. And inevitably, the energy runs ahead, the immune system responds to the command, and the sniffle becomes a severe cold.
It's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Your body is a loyal servant. It is just fulfilling the order placed by your words.
And the placebo and nocebo effects in medicine physically prove this, right? The stories we tell ourselves about our health dramatically alter our physical recovery times. So instead of I'm sick, the alternative she provides is to focus entirely on the desired state of healing. I feel healthy. I feel great. I feel full of life. Again, you are not ignoring a diagnosis. You are refusing to let the temporary state of illness become the commanding governor of your life's energy.
And then we arrive at the fourth phrase, which might be the most insidious of all because it actively invites other people to dismantle your blueprint. Poor me. Or, even more dangerously, allowing others to look at you and say, poor you.
Think about the last time you were struggling and someone offered you that specific brand of unsolicited, heavy pity. Oh, poor you. Your skin probably crawled, right? Dr. Gordon argues that isn't just a social annoyance. That is your energetic immune system trying to reject a faulty piece of blueprint someone's tried to force onto your construction site.
She talks about having an instinctual, almost visceral aversion to pity long before she fully conceptualized the energetic nature of words. When she had her first child, if people looked at her circumstances and offered that poor you energy, she fiercely rejected it. She refused to let that vibration land on her or her family.
She acted as an absolute energetic shield for her children. She explicitly stated she would not allow anyone to attach limiting or derogatory labels to her kids, whether they were called bad or labeled negatively based on being black or brown. She recognized that children's brains lack the critical faculty to reject declarations from adults.
That's so true.
If an adult speaks a limiting label over a child, the child accepts it as absolute reality. It becomes their structural foundation.
To combat the victimhood of poor me, she advises a profound linguistic shift. You declare, I am a person who is on a budget restraint, or I am living a life that is being transformed each day by the actions and decisions that I make. Notice the transition here. You move from the passive recipient of suffering, poor me, to the active conscious architect of your reality.
Just uttering that phrase forces cognitive accountability. If you declare that your life is transformed by your daily decisions, your subconscious mind goes on high alert. The next time you are about to make an impulsive, destructive choice, your brain flags it. It reminds you, wait, our blueprint says we are making conscious decisions to transform our life. It holds you to the new standard.
It is the relentless, continuous maintenance of the structure you are building. It requires hypervigilance over your own tongue.
But this brings us to what I believe is the most challenging and, honestly, emotionally heavy part of Dr. Gordon's entire philosophy. It is one thing to audit your own vocabulary today as a conscious adult, when you are relatively stable and listening to a deep dive.
Right, in a controlled environment.
But what happens when the faulty wiring wasn't installed by you? What happens when these deeply negative words were planted in your mind decades ago by the people closest to you before you even knew how to speak or defend yourself?
This is where the material crosses from structural philosophy into deep, vulnerable trauma reprogramming. Dr. Gordon does not pretend that you can simply chant positive words and erase decades of conditioning. She addresses the reality that overcoming past trauma and the limiting words spoken over you is a daily, active battle against invisible exit doors.
She shares an incredibly vulnerable story about the lingering power of her father's words. Even as a highly successful adult, she realized she was entirely paralyzed by fear when she simply wanted to write a letter to a mentor to thank him for the value he added to her life. She couldn't understand the fear until she traced the echo back to her childhood.
She recalled a specific repeating pattern. Whenever there was a function at school, she would take the initiative. She would sign up, pay her own money, get dressed, and be totally prepared to engage with the world. And her dad would look at her and issue a command. Where are you going? No, you can't go anywhere.
You can't go anywhere. Imagine the sheer energetic weight of a parent repeatedly speaking that over a child's ambition. It might have been born out of a misguided protective instinct, but the result was a prison. She realized that past command was acting as a cognitive phantom in her present life. Every time she tried to advance her career or build a new connection, that old malicious code would run silently in the background. You can't go anywhere.
It is exactly like outdated malicious code in a computer's operating system. The insidious nature of this programming is that it operates beneath your conscious awareness. It dictates your behavior, creating phantom exit doors out of fear, causing you to self-sabotage without ever knowing why.
And you cannot just highlight that code and hit delete. The brain doesn't work that way. The neurological pathways are physically carved into your brain. To eliminate the old code, you have to write a stronger, more complex overriding program, and you have to run it daily until neuroplasticity allows the new pathways to overwrite the old ones.
It takes constant repetition.
Yeah. And she had to do this not just to combat her father's protective restrictions, but to heal from the overt, unprovoked cruelty of strangers.
The incident she shares about the bus conductor in Jamaica is a devastating example of how words can inflict structural damage.
Let's set the scene for that. She was a young girl in the West Indies, riding the bus home from school. She explains the system where an adult conductor physically walks down the aisle collecting coins. This man, an adult figure of authority on that bus, looked directly at this little girl and bluntly, casually delivered a strike to her foundation. He said, "You're so ugly."
Think about the destructive kinetic energy of an adult speaking those exact words into a developing child's reality. You're so ugly. That is not passing comment. It is a structural blow intended to define her worth based on a superficial metric.
The question she poses is profound. How do you silence the echoes of a bus conductor or a parent from decades ago when their voices are the foundation of your inner monologue? Her answer is her current reality. She explicitly presents her life today as the ultimate rebuttal to those voices. She is the author of Order It. She's raising 5 children. She is running an aviation-adjacent business from home.
A total powerhouse.
Exactly. But she insists her biggest triumph isn't the business or the book. Her greatest victory is the new code she forces her brain to run every single morning.
She refers to it as her mirror mantra, and it is the most triumphant, undeniable example of ordering reality in her entire curriculum. She physically stands in front of a mirror, making eye contact with herself, and deliberately overrides the trauma of the past with architectural precision.
Listen to the construction of these sentences, because it isn't just an affirmation, it is defensive engineering. She looks in the mirror and says, "I am everything that I need to be. I'm smart enough, brilliant enough, young enough, wise enough. I have been through enough."
We have to pause on that specific phrase. I have been through enough. It is a masterpiece of self-affirmation theory. It acknowledges the immense pain and the trauma without allowing it to dictate the future. It is a definitive declaration that the toll has been paid in full. The suffering is no longer required.
And then she delivers the killing blow to the bus conductor's echo. She says, "I am the perfect person for my assignment. No one can do it like me. I am an unrepeatable miracle."
An unrepeatable miracle.
Yeah.
Notice how that phrase completely bypasses the subjective, superficial metric of appearance that the conductor tried to trap her in. She doesn't look in the mirror and say, "I am actually very pretty."
Right, because that would just be playing his game.
Exactly. Doing so would still validate the premise that physical appearance is the metric of her worth. By declaring herself an unrepeatable miracle, she shifts the foundation entirely. She roots her ultimate value in the sheer, statistical, biological fact of her unique, irreplaceable existence. It is an unassailable truth.
You cannot break a foundation constructed out of unrepeatable miracles. The malware cannot penetrate that code. But what I find so deeply refreshing about Dr. Gordon's entire philosophy is that she doesn't pretend this process is easy. She doesn't sell a fantasy where you just say the mantra and float through life on a cloud.
Oh, not at all.
She acknowledges that constantly monitoring your vocabulary, keeping all the exit doors locked, and operating your life at 40,000 feet requires immense energy. It requires grace, and it requires a sense of humor to prevent catastrophic burnout.
Her daily maintenance routine is a testament to the necessity of cognitive rest. You cannot run a high-performance engine continuously without a pit stop. She implements practices like Thankful Thursday, which is a deliberate mechanism to actively scan the environment for gratitude, acting as a cooling system for the brain.
The story she tells about the hotel sign perfectly captures this need for a cooling system. She was staying at a hotel in Vancouver, likely traveling, working, maintaining this intense manifestation mindset. She goes down for breakfast and sees a witty quote on a sign that reads, "The first 5 days after the weekend are the hardest. Let us help you get through it."
It is a brilliant piece of wry observational humor, but her psychological takeaway from that sign is what matters. She uses that moment to remind her audience that you have to take a minute to breathe. You have to allow yourself to laugh and relax. Finding a reason to be amused, even by a simple sign in a hotel lobby, is a critical component of resilience.
The grace and the humor are the oil in the engine. They are what allow you to maintain that incredible F1 speed and precision without shattering into a million pieces.
If we step back and survey the entire architectural blueprint we've decoded today from Dr. Gordon's teachings, it is undeniably rigorous. It demands a level of self-awareness that is deeply uncomfortable. But it is ultimately the most empowering structure you can build.
Let's trace the lines of this blueprint one more time. For you listening, we started our journey miles above the Earth at 40,000 feet, realizing that time is not a passive river. It is a tangible instrument measuring your expectation. Every single second is counting down, demanding your readiness.
We then brought that urgency down to the ground, walked into the room of our biggest challenges, and definitively locked all the exit doors. We burned the ships, forcing our brains out of passive hope and into the deep, invisible, dark work of growing roots.
From that locked room, we conducted a ruthless audit of our daily vocabulary. We systematically removed the lazy, destructive, energetic malware like "I'm broke, I'm tired," and "poor me," ensuring that we aren't subconsciously building the very obstacles we are desperately trying to escape.
And finally, we learned the mechanics of standing in front of a mirror and writing a new, impenetrable code to drown out the limiting echoes of the people who tried to define our past.
We learned what it actually means to order our reality. It is not wishing upon a star. It is issuing a clear command and then painstakingly aligning every single habit, word, and thought to match that command.
The overarching revelation here is a shift from passive, hopeful thinking to aggressive, conscious creation. By stating exactly what you want, your ultimate end goal, rather than endlessly describing the symptoms of your current suffering, you align your neurobiology, your actions, and your physical environment with the solution.
And as a direct reminder to you right now, wherever you are listening to this, you have been through enough. The waiting period was your preparation. You are the perfect person for your exact assignment, and you are an unrepeatable miracle.
The instrument of time has measured your expectation, and the delay is over. It is time.
But before we let you go, I want to leave you with one final thought to genuinely interrogate on your own. We began this deep dive talking about blueprints and how the structural integrity of a skyscraper or a human life depends entirely on the invisible lines drawn on that paper long before the concrete is ever poured. If Dr. Gordon's physics are correct, if the specific words you use are living, energetic beings that act as scouts running out ahead of you to construct the physical reality you will be forced to inhabit tomorrow, what is the most frequent silent phrase echoing in your own mind today? And what kind of house is it, quietly, relentlessly building for you to walk into tomorrow?
Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. I hope something you heard sparked something within you, because that spark, that's your order being placed. So be intentional, be aware, and be bold enough to ask for what you truly desire. As always, I want to leave this with you. Change your order and you change your life. If today's episode spoke to you, share it with a woman in your life who needs to hear it. Leave a review, subscribe, and join us next time, because we're only getting started. Until then, I'm Dr. Pal, and my word for you is simply this: order it.